Hello Angels and Biscuits, CSDL here, and today's video is going to be my March wrap-up and my April TBR. So for my March wrap-up, I read The Isle of the Lost, the Bane Chronicles, and The Count of Monte Cristo. So we will start with The Count of Monte Cristo because this was a 2-month buddy read, and I'm only maybe half-ish way through it. I talk about the buddy read in my March TBR video, so I really won't talk about that here. But yeah, so my overall impression so far of The Count of Monte Cristo is good. I mean, it's not my favorite classic. I enjoy the story. I like the classic tale of revenge. Edmond Dante, our main character, he is framed for a crime he did not commit. He's accused of being a traitor, a Napoleon supporter, and he gets sent to prison, and he gets to plot his revenge on those that put him there, and eventually he gets out of prison and he gets to go execute his elaborate revenge scheme, and it's fun. I like the story, I like the characters. My biggest issue with this book is how wordy it is. It is so heavy-handed in description, and it sort of takes away from the story. Like, it's really testing your attention span. And I think why it's as wordy and descriptive as it is it was initially published as a serialization, like chapter by chapter. It wasn't just written as this giant novel. It was, a chapter here, and then next week the next chapter was published, and whatever. So it wasn't a traditionally published novel, and the wordiness doesn't always bother me. Like, some authors can be heavy-handed with the description and it works and it's not too much. Like, I'd say Brandon Sanderson or Stephen King kind of toe that line of too much, but not quite, and it works, and I like it, it's good. But this is really pushing my attention span. And because it's so chunky, I had to even buy, well, I didn't have to, but I chose to, got the audiobook version of this because I didn't like to carry this chunky beast around the house and stuff. And I have nothing against audiobooks. They're my least favorite format of a book, but I don't retain the information as well as when I just read the physical copy. But again, it's very chunky. That's my biggest problem so far. I like the story. I mean, it wouldn't be my favorite classic, and it's probably not the classic I would go recommending to people unless you're feeling ambitious. The Picture of Dorian Gray, now that one I would recommend in general for a classic. But this one, I'd say if you don't mind heavy-handed description and you're prepared to have your attention span tested, it's so far a good story. Also, if you like, historical references and things, there's a lot of that in here, because French Revolution, issues with Napoleon. This is taking place during, well, not during, but around the time of the French Revolution, in that era. So a lot of historical stuff mentioned and all of that. So if that also interests you. Next we have The Isle of the Lost by Melissa de la Cruz. This is a Descendants novel. Some of you may know the Descendants films over on Disney+. I am an absolute fan of those films, which is why when I found out they were books, I was like, I need them. I finally got around to reading book 1 of the series, and I thought it was wonderful. It's a lot darker, or more, not darker, but we'll stick with dark. So it's a little bit darker than the films, but it's still a middle grade targeted audience, so it's not dark, but for middle grade, I was impressed. And the perspective tends to alternate depending on the chapter. Like each chapter, you know, it alternates between the four main characters, Mal, Evie, Jay, and Carlos. So the perspective, like if it's Mal one chapter, and then it'll be Evie, then Carlos, then Jay, and you know, and it keeps cycling that way, which normally I'm not the biggest fan of perspective changing like that in books, but I think it was done very well, at least in the first one. We'll see how it goes in future books. But yeah, so I didn't hate the different perspective changes every chapter. I thought the story was very well done. You know, you could really feel the struggle that the kids were going through. You know, they're all children of Disney villains, and their parents have these high expectations of them. And the story kind of focuses around Mal having to acquire her mother, Maleficent, her scepter, and she gets her friends. They're like not actually friends at the beginning, but her and Jay are kind of crime friends. Like they will steal stuff together, but they don't like have this super close relationship. But like they're as close to friends as villain kids have, Mal and Jay. Jay agrees to help her for his own selfish reasons, and same with Carlos and Evie, but Evie is kind of the nicest one of the bunch, let's be honest. Well, her and Carlos are pretty sweet characters. Anyway, okay. So yeah, Mal recruits them all into helping her find, locate, bring back her mother's evil scepter. She's always trying to prove herself evil and worthy. Like many of the villain kids, you know, Mal's just trying to make her mother proud, and that's a very difficult task to do. Maleficent she just keeps judging and comparing Mal to herself, and you know, you really feel for Mal, and well, you really feel for all of them. Like, their parents are not good people. I mean, yeah, they're Disney villains, so they're supposed to be bad people, but it's like those poor kids. If I had a complaint, I think the complaint would be going from this book to the second book. So at the end of this book, there is a little excerpt from book 2, and it sounds like they completely skip over the four kids, Mal, Evie, Jay, and Carlos, going over to Auradon, where all the good Disney heroes live, or the school where the hero kids go to school. They completely skip over how that happens and like their first year there. Cause like the film covers that. I don't know if the film specifically picked that because the books didn't cover it, or if it's supposed to be a companion. Like, I'm very confused, and maybe I'll have to Google that. But that's going to be a little bit jarring if we go from Mal has no idea who Prince Ben is to they're dating. Like, I know what happens thanks to the movie, but like, you know, if you don't watch the movie and you're just, unless there's flashbacks I don't know about, like, I don't know. We'll see when I get to book 2, I suppose. But I hate time skips without elaboration. That is something that I'm not a fan of in books, and if that's what this is doing, not a fan. But otherwise, the story was nice. It was a lot darker than I thought it was going to be. Again, dark for middle grade, so not actually all that dark. Like, it's not Stephen King dark. Like, no worries. But for Disney and for a middle grade book, like, I was impressed. The characters have a lot of nice progression, nice character growth. They each have their own personalities, and in this case, I actually liked the alternating perspective chapters. It worked very well, and you got to see the characters progress and grow as the story continued. So yeah, I am looking forward to book 2. So that brings us to my favorite book that I read this month, and that is The Bane Chronicles by Cassandra Clare. Oh, Sarah Rees Brennan and Maureen Johnson. I forget she collaborates on a lot of her books lately. Yeah, this is part of the Shadowhunters series. This is like a companion novel, I guess. It solely focuses on Magnus Bane and his life experiences, like various moments throughout his 400 plus years as a warlock. Magnus Bane is a character you meet in the Mortal Instruments. I don't know when he shows up or whatever because I haven't actually read the Mortal Instruments yet. Yeah, he's a warlock, he does magic, he's immortal, he can be mortally wounded, but he will live forever, you know, like, unless he's murdered or something. But yeah, so he has been my favorite character. Like, I started Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunters novels super out of order. I started them with the Red Scrolls of Magic, which is centered around Magnus and his Shadowhunter boyfriend Alec, and I loved them. It got me to watch the show, which maybe biases me towards Magnus and Alec more, but I absolutely love them in the show. So I was super excited to read this, and this did not disappoint. Like, Magnus has had such a fun and interesting life, but it also has a lot of like sad moments, you know, because he is a warlock, he is immortal, especially when it comes to love. Like, I don't blame him for getting a little jaded sometimes. Like, warlocks, I can see how it happens because you live forever, you love hard, and then the person you love likely is mortal and they die, or they're a crazy vampire and they break your heart. Like, I feel for Magnus. That has to be hard. And, you know, there's a lot of comedic moments too. It's not just all sad warlock stuff. And then you get some badass warlock moments. If you love the show and you love Magnus, or you just love Magnus from the Mortal Instruments books and you haven't actually read the Bane Chronicles yet, I totally recommend you do that. It's such a fun companion novel, and you know, it's all from Magnus's perspective, so, you know, the more you love Magnus, the more enjoyable this becomes. I would love to know still what, like, Magnus doesn't even know, so I too would like to know what got him actually banned from Peru, and I also would like to see more of his relationship with Alec from his perspective, like in here. Like, they have his first date with Alec. Loved that. Like, I could just have more books on Magnus. Like, he's a really old warlock, right? So we could have a book 2. We could have another Bane Chronicles. I'd be down for that. Honestly, and Magnus is so far my favorite character amongst all of the Shadowhunters content that I've read. Like, Magnus, number 1. I love him so much. I love him. I would protect him. Like, he deserves all the happiness in the world. I will fight for him. Like, just seriously, more Magnus books. Like, they don't go all the way back to childhood either, which that is something I think that would be interesting if we go that far back. And, you know, his time with Ragnar Fell and the Silent Brothers, all that fun stuff. I definitely wouldn't start with this though. Like, say you're new to Shadowhunters and you don't know a lot about Shadowhunters, you could pick it up, but I would wait to read it until you've read some of the other ones, or you've watched the show. Like, if you've watched the show, actually, this would be a fun little companion thing to read, because there's little bits in here that you'll pick up in the show, like when Magnus is going through Ragnar's things in the show and he picks up that charango, it comes up in here. Like, that's partly, I think, why he got banned from Peru, because he was so bad at playing it. Like, llamas ran away from him and it was hilarious. But yeah, anyway. So, if you're already invested in Shadowhunters and haven't read this one, totally do that. Do it. So now we will move on to my April my April TBR. As you already know, I will be finishing The Count of Monte Cristo, so this will be the first one on my April TBR. So aside from that one, I will be continuing Percy Jackson this month. We will read book 2, The Sea of Monsters. So when we last left Percy, he had discovered he was the son of Poseidon. So Poseidon was his Greek god parent. He foiled an evil plot. He recovered Zeus's stolen lightning bolt. And he got to know more about Camp Half-Blood and, you know, made some friends and all that fun stuff. But yeah, so this book, it says, Percy Jackson's 7th grade year has been surprisingly quiet. Not a single monster has set foot on his New York prep school campus. But when an innocent game of dodgeball among Percy and his classmates turns into a death match against an ugly gang of cannibal giants, things get ugly. And the unexpected arrival of his friend Annabeth brings more bad news. The magical borders that protect Camp Half-Blood have been poisoned by a mysterious enemy, and unless a cure is found, the only safe haven for demigods will be destroyed. In this fresh, funny, and wildly popular follow-up to The Lightning Thief, Percy and his friends must journey into the Sea of Monsters to save their camp, but first Percy will discover a stunning new secret about his family, one that makes him question whether being claimed as Poseidon's son is an honor or simply a cruel joke. So he's kind of been struggling a little bit too with, you know, his father being Poseidon and him never being there and what it meant for his mother and his family and the whole thing. So I'm not surprised there's going to be more family drama with Percy and Poseidon. And if you've seen my past video on The Lightning Thief, you'd know I'm not the biggest fan of the series yet, which might upset a lot of people because I know this is wildly popular and people love it. I like the story and I like the mythology aspects to it. I find it so hard to believe that the children are so smart, except for maybe Athena's daughter, you know, because that makes sense. But like, children should not be able to be smarter than like all the adults in the room. But like I get he kind of, I think, tries to deal with that by saying the gods can't interfere or something. I don't know. But like that is a problem that I have, and it does make it difficult for me to read. But I'm gonna stick it out. We will read the rest of the series, and I will hopefully enjoy it more as the story progresses. So yeah, Sea of Monsters. And the last book for my April TBR is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, or book 1 of the Mortal Instruments series, also super shiny. Like, all of my Cassandra Clare Shadowhunters novels are so shiny and I love it. And like, that alone would get me to buy them because look, they're so shiny. Okay. So yeah, City of Bones is the first installment of the Mortal Instruments. It's our first Shadowhunters novel. It was the first published one. So this is our whole introduction to the Shadowhunters universe, and I have been reading them totally out of order. So we are gonna finally fix that and start with the OG series. This book centers around Clary Frey, and I think in the books she's 15 turning 16. I know in the show she's like 17 turning 18, or she starts out at 18, so they aged them up in the show, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so she's younger here, and that's gonna probably be a little jarring for me having watched the show first, but yeah. The book follows our protagonist, Clary Frey, who thought she was just this regular old mundane 16-year-old girl. Turns out she's a shadow hunter. So along with Clary, we get to learn about the shadow world, the shadow hunters, who are the not half angel, but like the angelic bloodline beings, the warlocks, who are half demon, half human, just regular old demons, which are typically what shadow hunters fight, and then, you know, vampires, werewolves, the fae creatures like the Seelie, and all that fun stuff. And another driving plot point in this book is the kidnapping of Clary's mother, and Clary kind of running into Alec, Izzy, and Jace at a club, and she can see them. She's not supposed to see them because they're using their Shadowhunter ruins to cloak them, so unless you have the sight, you shouldn't see them. And the sight just means like you can see the supernatural world. And typically a mundane does not have the sight, and if they do, it's usually because they've had some supernatural bloodline in their past, I believe. Don't quote me. And I am kind of excited to see how this all started, and I might be biased already towards certain characters because of the show, so it'll be interesting to kind of see how they were originally written versus how they were portrayed in the show. Like, I already know I still love Alec and Magnus because I've read enough of books with them in it to know I still love them. Like, I think Izzy is going to be one where I love her in the show, but I don't know that I'm going to love her in the books. Clary and Jace are up in the air. Like, Jace, I don't like him much in the show, so my expectations are not high for him. And Clary starts off kind of meh for me in the show, but she gets better, so I don't know if that will track too in the series. But yeah, so I am excited to finally start the Mortal Instruments. If you guys have read it, let me know your thoughts. You can also just let me know your thoughts on the Shadowhunters in general. That is all I had for you guys today. Let me know what you guys are reading in April. Let me know if you've read the Mortal Instruments series, or if you've read other Shadowhunters novels. What's your favorite? What did you like about them? What did you not like about them? I will talk Shadowhunters all day. Also, leave a like, comment, or subscribe if you want. That'd be cool. And I will see you guys next time.